Welcome to Capital Day and Advocacy from Home 2021. I'm thankful that you are willing to learn about how you can be an advocate for private homeschooling and that we can still make a difference, even though so many things have changed in the way that we interact with legislators and their staff. We can still make a difference. So let's jump right in. What does Capital Day typically look like outside of right now? So what we do with Capital Day is try to put a friendly face for the homeschooling community in front of legislators and their staff. We want to let legislators and their staff see a real live homeschool family or homeschooler face to face. And many of them will experience that for the first time through Capital Day. And many of them do each year. And so you are part of something that's really important when you are part of Capital Day. Speaking events with legislators and homeschool advocates is a part of Capital Day. It's something that's very helpful to not only inspire you to be an advocate for private homeschooling and to be involved and engaged in our government, but also to help you understand why. Why do we do this, and is it worth it? Does it matter that I get involved? So it's really important to be able to hear those speakers and to understand from their perspective the how and the why. We want to build relationships within the Capitol building because it can help us when the time comes that we are facing battles against private homeschooling, when we're facing additional regulations that are being proposed in the legislature. We want to be able to already have started and established relationships one-on-one with legislators, with staff members, with people inside the building, with people in district offices. We want to be already working on those relationships before we really need help from those people. So it's really important to build relationships, to be engaging with the folks at the local level from the district, because it really does matter. And when the time comes that we need to lean on those relationships, we need to ask those friends for help, we can call them friends. We can call them what they are, representatives, because we already have that relationship with them. In addition to hearing from speakers and receiving training, we want to enable you and to prepare you and to get you engaged in meetings with legislators and staff, and that's typically done inside of the Capitol building in Sacramento. But this year, 2021, our Capitol Day is going to look a little different. We want to encourage you to make contact with district offices, and in some cases that might be an in-person meeting, but for most folks it's going to be something a bit different, and we'll go into some options for how that can look for you later. Typically we have in-person training in Sacramento, and we visit every single legislator's office with information about private homeschooling. So all 120 legislators can have that information and we don't miss anybody. So we visit every office on a typical Capitol Day inside the Capitol building. So since this year it's different, the ideal meetings are not possible. We have restrictions. The Capitol building is actually closed to the public. Capitol offices, in fact, have limited or even in some cases no staff available to answer phones or to handle things. A lot of folks, legislators and staff members, are actually working from home for the work that they would regularly do in the Capitol building. So things are just different for everybody. We still, though, need to have those legislators contacted. We need to have them understand how homeschooling works in California. We need to have them understand that private homeschooling in California is alive and well, and that homeschool students do well in California. It's a option, it's an educational opportunity and option that is currently being utilized by a lot of people, and that it's working well. And we want them to know that it's working well, and we want them to have somewhat of an ownership of making sure that that stays an option for folks. And so it's no less critical to reach out to legislators and their staff this year than any other year. It's just as vital now as it has been in the past. The legislature is still introducing bills. They are still active. They are still active and working on moving policies into our codes in California. And so we can't just say, oh, this year is different, so we don't need to get involved. We do need to get involved. We have got to stay engaged with our legislators so that they know that we care about these freedoms. In 2021, district office meetings are a little different. They are not happening in person very much. In fact, legislators themselves, as well as district office staff and, as I mentioned, Capitol staff, are working more and more out of either the district office or more from home this year than previously. So in some cases, district offices have one or two, maybe, people working there, and in some cases, the district offices are just closed. You won't be able to walk in to most district offices in the state of California because the doors are closed. The doors are locked. There may be somebody working there, but they're not receiving in-person visitors because of COVID restrictions limiting their availability. So just be aware that things are different for them just like they are for everybody. So we need individual families at the district level to engage with legislators and their staffs through the district offices. Even though you may not be able to walk into a district office, you need to picture that district office is the point of contact where you regularly need to be engaging with those folks there, with the staff, with the legislator, your legislator at that district office. That's your point of contact for local access to your Sacramento representatives. So everybody in California has a California state senator and a California state assembly member. So remember that you, wherever you live in California, you have a California state senator and a California state assembly member. Our assembly is made up of 80 members and our Senate is made up of 40 members. So that's two houses, but they all work in Sacramento. And this is separate from in DC, where we have the California state representatives that go to DC. They're California's representatives to the state Senate, which we have two of those. And then we have California representatives that go to DC to go represent us as Californians in the House of Representatives. So those are at the federal level, but what we are doing is we're addressing legislation that actually makes policy in California. So that all happens in Sacramento. Those legislators are your California State Senate, California State Assembly, and they meet in Sacramento. So that's who we're talking about with Capitol Day. We reach out to and try to make connections with and build relationships with our California state senators and California assembly members. So we need individual families to make contact with those folks, whether it's making in-person meetings or Zoom meetings with the folks at the district office. We want to, if we can't do that, the next best thing after that would be either a phone call to interact with them over the phone, or to have a letter that you write as a letter of introduction, letting them know that you're a homeschooler living in their district. And we'll have more information on that later. Now, if you are going to have an in-person meeting, which isn't probably very likely, at least not at this time, if you're going to have an in-person meeting, make sure that you're considerate of what they want to do. Only go for an in-person meeting if you are 100% willing to accommodate their guidelines that they're following right now. Now, whether that's this week, next month, next year even, if you want to have an in-person meeting, which is a great thing to do, it's important that you consider their comfort level when it comes to whether it's COVID restrictions or anything else, any other parameters that they might have to work under. So be willing to even just make it an in-person drop-off where you come in, you talk to the secretary, you hand them the packet, you introduce yourself as a homeschooler in their district, and then you head out, making sure that you're being extremely considerate of their time. But these meetings are really critical because they're a way for you to connect with your legislators on the local level in the district. So we want this to happen in all 120 legislators. There's 120 of them if you add the Assembly and the Senate together. There's 120 legislators that need to be contacted by homeschoolers throughout the state. Now, we're hoping that they will each be contacted by somebody living in their district. That's a big project. It's a lot of people getting involved, but you can do it. And we know that this makes a difference. So engage, and if you can, visit both your assembly member and your state senator. And if you have time, if you have the ability, we would love for you to help us engage with those legislators where we don't actually have somebody signed up to reach out to them and meet with somebody in their district. So maybe you have a neighboring district that needs a visit and there's not somebody in that district that's able to do it. Maybe you can volunteer for that. Families can locate which legislator represents their area, followed by setting up a virtual meeting or a phone call to share information on the homeschool community with those staff members. But first you have to stop and find out who your legislators are. You're a state senator, your state assembly member. Who are those people? How do you find that out? Well, you can go to our website, fpmca.org/myrep. It's really easy to plug in your address and find out who represents you and go from there to make contact with them. Every legislator's office will receive a packet in the mail from us. We call it our legislator packet, and you will have access to a digital version of that packet online. And as I mentioned, it's important that you have this packet digitally because not only will you want to look through it and make sure that you're familiar with certain information in it, as well as be able to answer questions from the material that's in there, but the legislators, remember, they may not be working out of their district office, or they may be working from home. Staff members that you talk to might be working from home. So if you call into a district office, that number may be rerouted to someone's cell phone and they may answer from home. So you want to be aware of this, also being sure that you're sensitive to any constraints that they may have working from home, as you can imagine they may have. But also be aware that they may not have the physical packet that we mailed to their office. Yeah, their office got it, but perhaps you need to send to the person you're speaking to a digital copy of that packet. So we're making that available to you in case you need to get that to them. There's a couple of different ways we will send it out. You'll be able to email it to them, but we'll also have it posted on our resources page on our website that you can easily access even individual documents from that packet. But I want you to know that just because we sent them a packet, they may not have the physical packet available. You may have to take some action to email it or send it to them somehow. And if you need help with that in any way, contact our office and we can help you figure out how to make that happen. The other option is also to offer to hand deliver a packet to their district office in case they lost theirs or somebody else took it or somehow it got to the wrong person, or any number of things could happen. So we want to go out of our way to try to get them the information that they need to make the right decisions when it comes to making policy on private home education. Hopefully those issues won't come up for them, but if they do, we want them to have all the information that they need to make the right decisions when it comes to homeschool policy. So we will send hard copy packets, but you will be able to send digital copies to as many people in those offices as you need to. If you have to talk to 2 or 3 different people and send that packet to them, go ahead and do that. It's sometimes necessary to contact multiple people in order to actually get through to the person that you need to speak to. So the packet itself contains information on the law for private homeschooling. It contains information on why we don't need any homeschool legislation. It has a variety of studies cited in there. It also has test scores for homeschool students, SAT scores, students taking tests in anywhere from elementary, junior high, high school. There's a lot of resources in there that show test results, and also non-academic studies as well, showing social information about homeschool families throughout the country. And so they can easily understand a lot of the answers to questions that they might have already about homeschooling. So if they don't have all the information they need, if they still have further questions that you feel like you can't answer, you can certainly have them contact me. And my contact information is in that packet. It's on our website. You have information that is easily passed on to them, so you can certainly encourage them to contact me, or you can contact me and tell me, hey, this person I talked to needs more information about this. Can you call them? And I'm happy to do that. I'd love to follow up from those meetings and give them more information that they may need. So certainly pass on that information either one way or the other. Ask them to call me or ask me to call them. I just want to make sure that all those questions get answered as best as we can. So certainly look through the packet ahead of time before you make contact, whether you're making contact in person or on Zoom or by the phone. Make sure that you look through the packet, and if you're confused about anything, you can certainly contact us as well. But there's a ton of information in that packet, and I would encourage you to review it before you make those meetings. What kind of questions should you expect when you're in a meeting or when you're talking to a legislator or their staff member? Well, there's a few that we commonly get. One is, are there homeschoolers in my district? Well, if you're contacting them at a district office as a person living in their district, you can definitely answer that one and say, yeah, there are homeschoolers in your district. I'm one of them. So you can answer that question easily. But sometimes they ask also, well, how many homeschoolers are in my district? And based on the number of homeschoolers in California, we would say that there's approximately about 2,500 homeschoolers in every assembly district, because there's 80 assembly districts. Or if you're talking to a senator or senator's staff, it's about 5,000 homeschoolers per Senate district. So another question you might get is, who do you represent? And you can say, I'm representing myself. I want you to know about homeschooling. But you also are, in a way, representing the whole homeschool community. You're a private home educator in California, and you're trying to protect the right to homeschool in California for all private home educators in California. Do homeschoolers in California have an advocacy organization? That's another question that you might get. And yes, I work on that, and that's my job. I work to advocate for private homeschoolers, and I have some part-time staff that are incredibly helpful, and they can answer questions for legislators' staff, as well as help you understand any answers that you need for explaining to legislators and their staff too. But we do have an advocacy organization. We are working 365 days a year to make sure that we are monitoring all the legislation in California. And we were started in 1986 and have continued to monitor and get involved in legislation in California since then. So another question would be, are home educators accountable to the state school system? And the answer to that is no. California private home educators function under a different law. We actually function under the same law that any other private school in California functions. So those other private campus schools function under the same law as private homeschoolers. So we are not accountable to the public school system in California. We're under a different set of laws. We do have laws. We do have requirements that we have to follow, and those things are outlined in the packet, in the document about the law for home schooling in California. So what else to talk about during your meeting or your Zoom meeting or your phone call or in your letter? What else to talk about? You can thank them for the meeting. It's really appropriate to thank them for their time, their work that they do. Express your gratitude for their work, and mention that you want the best quality education for your children, and that you're teaching your children at home, and that's working well for you. Identify yourself as somebody who is a constituent from the district, if that is indeed the case. Also, mention any position or in any organization or school that you hold, if that fits with your meeting. You can mention that, any group you're involved with. And also, you might share some ways that either you or your children have benefited from home education. And these conversations are really helpful because they can help people that are not familiar with private home education to become more familiar with why people do this thing called homeschooling, and what's the purpose that they would engage so much with their children and invest their life in it. You can explain that by telling them stories about benefits of homeschooling that you have experienced in your home. So moving on to things not to talk about. There are some things that you want to be aware of to not engage with them on. And sometimes people think that this time of connecting with your legislator is a great time to bring up all the other concerns that you have about government. That's not really the case. If you have a meeting with a legislator or their staff member, you should keep it to one issue and one issue only. And in this case, we're talking about private homeschooling. We want to keep it the way it is. We like private homeschooling and we want to keep it legal in California, and it's working well. So that's all we're trying to do here. We're not asking for any money. We are not pushing some bill or pushing an agenda other than please leave us alone, do nothing. But we do want them to, if there is something that comes up that would impact us, we do want them to engage and try to protect the right to private homeschool in California. So, but it's not the time to bring up other issues like water issues or anything else that you might be passionate about that might affect your family even. It's not the time to bring those other issues up. And it's not the time to talk about other concerns you have with government in terms of education either. It's not the time to go launching into something about why public schools are bad and you don't like them. A lot of people have really strong feelings about that, and that's fine, but that's a separate issue. We're focusing on private home education, and that's where your conversations should stay, is on private home education and trying to keep those freedoms intact, both for now and for future generations. So let's work together on staying on message with private home education freedoms and not veer off into some other issue that may be important to you, but isn't what we're here to talk about today. We don't also want to launch into discussions about what your group is struggling with in terms of COVID restrictions right now, or that you're ignoring certain COVID restrictions, or that how your group is functioning. You know, we're engaging in advocacy on behalf of private home education, not just for what's going on today, but for a long time into the future. So remember that it's not just about what's happening and going on in our lives right now, but and that's important, but homeschooling has been going on, and we've been advocating for private homeschooling for many years. And so the numbers that we're looking at in terms of how many people are homeschooling, the way that people are homeschooling might look a little different today than it did a year ago, but we want to look at the big picture when we talk about private homeschooling. We want to look at the big picture when it comes to the law. We want to look at the big picture when it comes to the numbers. We want to look at the big picture when it comes to the practical outworking of how homeschooling is functioning. We want to look at, the groups that we've been involved with in the past and how that's worked. We want to look at the park days that we that we've had in the past and how that worked. Big picture of how all of these things work, and not get caught up with, there's a lot of controversy over meetings, in-person things, and some areas of California are under different levels of restrictions. Some public schools are going back into in-classroom instruction for part of the week or all of the week. Some schools are not doing any. So for all of that, try to take a step back and look at the big picture, and not just focus in on what we're dealing with right now. So try to remember that, and be considerate of where those people are at and what restrictions they might be living under, or what they may be thinking that schools should have. Because remember, these people might have opinions about what the restrictions should or should not be as well. So try not to get into an interaction about that. And I would encourage you to stay as professional as you can, but engage with them on these issues. The issues of how homeschooling works, and answer their questions. But stay professional about it. Make sure that if you're interacting with staff members or legislators, only take children with you, or have children present that might be that are able to stay professional and answer the questions and stay on message in the way that really should be done. So after you have your meeting, it's always appropriate to follow up with a thank you note, to let them know that you appreciated the time that they spent with you, whether it's over the phone or in person. Send them a thank you note and let them know that you appreciate them. For all of this, I just want to say thank you for being involved. Thank you for being an advocate for private homeschooling, and I wish you all the best. If you do have questions, I would encourage you to look at our website and review the resources there, and also contact our office if you have questions, or even just want to talk about how your meeting went. We do have a feedback loop on our website so that you can give us a feedback on how your meeting went, and we would really appreciate you letting us know how those meetings went, if they were positive, if they were negative, if they were indifferent, if they maybe have some follow-up questions that we should be aware of. Let us know, and there's a place to do that on our website. So thank you so much for your involvement. Thank you for engaging with us, and I hope you enjoy your advocacy work. Thanks.